Okay, so we've got all our lead elements for the breakdown now, all together. So we've got the 4 layers sat, we've got the secondary melody, and I'm going to talk now about building the actual breakdown up and elements in there. Now you can see there's not a lot going on really. The other things that I've got going on there is white noise, which is just some nice little sweeps to bring things up. I've got like a bass drop. Bass drops I think are great, sound massive in a club. A lot of people think it's a really old school technique, so they used to do it in like old 90s trance tunes, but that's where I suppose I got the inspiration for this. And I think there's nothing better than when you're on a dance floor and you hear a massive boom as it comes down. So we've got that in there. We've got little effects clap with a big reverb on there, which is sent to me reverb bus. We've got a little bit of percussion in there, and I think percussion's another important thing to keep going on in your breakdowns as well. Because it starts to build the pace before the track kicks in, whereas like as well you find in a lot of like dance floors with this kind of music, when we're playing in a Korea and Asia and places like that, it doesn't matter what the drop does. If the drop's heavy, they love it. They absolutely love it. I mean, obviously it's got to be a good drop, but they love it. And then when there's a breakdown, because there's no beat, like, you know, if you're into your trance and stuff, it's great, that hands in the air moment, but a lot of people don't get it and they don't like it, so you need to keep the pace going through the track. So what I did here is we've got a clap and the clap and the ride that we've got from our drums. They just play throughout to keep things going. So we've got just nice and simple to start building the pace up in there. And then we've got some effects which are actually some effects that I made myself a while ago, because we do like to build our own effects and things, which is like this. Now, I'm not sure whether I think we did that ages ago on an old SH-101 synthesizer that we used to have. We did loads of crazy effects and edited them and kept them, so it's, you know, we've still got them in the bank to use in all our tracks. And the other thing we've got going in there is another effects up sound, which is just, again, it's just out of another sample pack that I've got. Few effects on there, a little bit of EQ. Just a bit of echo and things like that to carry it through. Now, one of the other things that I think is important as you come to start building it up is some form of sub bass underneath everything. And in this we used a drone, which we've got here. If you listen to this, we've just got a it's just a low note which follows the chords. And all I did for this is actually, my favourite sound bank for silent is the Umet Ozcan Tech Trance Essentials, and that's where we get a lot of our sound, like sort of the bases of our sounds, and then we mess around with them. And there's just a drone in there, and I've done nothing to it, just use the drone, which I just think's great. Absolutely love it. Really good. So then when you've got it all together collectively, it sounds really, really good. Oh, and the other thing, before I play it all, is we've got the snare, which I've used on the offbeat. We've used that to make a nice snare build here. There we go. So what I'll do is I'll play it all as a whole before I go into a little bit of depth about a few of the other things. There you can see just that few elements, you know, cleverly arranged, you know, builds a lot of tension and it works really well. So one of the other things I've done is on some of the effects, I've put a volume curve, so things don't just come and slam in. They get a nice fade on them. Now, if you press Escape on your keyboard, it brings up this tool palette, and you actually get what's called the fade tool, and that's how you draw these fades. And if you want to give them a curve so they come in a little bit slower and then faster all of a sudden, just go down to the automation curve tool, and and you can just click on there, and go back onto the fade tool. I think there we go, it brings it down on its own, you don't need that. But you can use the other tool for when you're drawing your filter automation and things on there. Okay, so one thing you got to remember is you've got to press Escape and go back to your pointer tool, because otherwise you end up moving stuff and fading things and you're thinking like, oh, what's going on? So make sure you go back to your tool. Okay, so like a couple of things we've got on here, especially this effect, just to make it sound bigger, we've got a bit of a bit crusher on there. And what that does is, that just dirties it all up a little bit. So if I play that, it's only subtle, but it just ruffles things up a bit. Now, Ozone 4 is something I don't use anymore because I've got Ozone 5, and I'm sure I've got this on just for the stereo imaging, really, just to make this sound really wide. There, you can see on there. And then after that, all I did was limit it, and this is just to totally flatten it off completely, so you get no distortion or anything. And then just EQ'd it after I've limited it to sort of take away what I don't want, and then it also ruffles it up so it's not as flat. So even though a limiter is to flatten things, you can flatten the sound of things and then EQ them afterwards, which gives them more depth again, because you're making them uneven, but at the same time the frequencies that are left are still limited, so it's quite hard to explain, but you get a different sound doing it this way around than doing it the usual way around. Whether it's right or wrong, I don't know, but it does sound good, so it's one thing that I like to do. Okay, so that's sort of got on my effects really, just to make it sound a little bit bigger. And you can hear there that it cuts through the rest of the mix and that. Now, that's pretty much it for the breakdown. Again, like, you know, we've kept it nice and simple but effective. Everything that's in there's got a purpose without putting too much in there and making a mess of things. So, you know, keep that in mind. Put what you need in there. Everything in there's got a purpose. You don't need to put too much, you know, of things you don't need in there. And you come up with a pretty cool breakdown like that.